Finally, learn to turn that on. Okay. It takes a while. You can put the screen up. I will not need it, I don't think. Just bear with me for 2 seconds, please. Well, we're going to be in Genesis 26, verses 1 through 11. Junior church is dismissed. Thank you. Isn't that nice? The family's always looking out for one another. I love that. Without each other, where would we be? Very lonely. We'd be okay with just the Lord. He says He will never leave us nor forsake us. But He's called us to be a family. And He's called us together. And I think it's so important for us to understand and look back towards history to find out what is true and what is not true. Is Abraham a person who was chosen? Was Abraham worthy? Is Isaac a person who was chosen? Was Isaac worthy? Is Jacob a person who was chosen? Was Jacob worthy? So who is worthy? Only Jesus. He is worthy. And I hope that we get that as we're looking through the scriptures of Genesis. We realize that this is truth, that this is life. And He has called us to a life. He has not called us to death. Oh, death, where is thy sting? We just sang that. I think some of us have just spoken that this morning to each other, trying to encourage one another. Oh, death, where is thy sting? Jesus took it to the cross. He said, it is finished. So we're going back to where it started. We will start today by looking just a little ways back to remember where we were and who Isaac is. Know that God remains faithful. Amen. Get that. God remains faithful. When you act faithlessly, God remains faithful. Faithful for God cannot what? Deny Himself. He cannot deny Himself. Let us take a quick look at Genesis 22, 15 through 18. 22, 15 through 18. I'll be reading from the King James Version, so don't let that throw you. But in the King James Version, I'm reading 22, 15 through 18. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time. Wait a minute, where was the first time? The angel reached down and said, don't do that. Don't kill. Don't hurt that son. Stop. So he had spoken to him once. This is the second time. The angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time and said, by myself I have sworn, saith the Lord. For because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gates of his enemies, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. Failing to trust in God will lead us down very dark paths. Did we get that? Failing to trust in God will lead us down some very dark paths. It doesn't have to be that way. If we can just trust God, trust Him in His Word, trust Him in His promises, trust Him in His covenant, He always remains faithful. He cannot deny Himself. God has made an emphatic, everlasting covenant with Abraham, and here we see also with Isaac. By faith it is possessed. By faith is how we who are called and are chosen are to live. We are to live by faith, not by sight. Some of the things we see scare us, don't they? We watch a world falling apart. We watch all kinds of crazy mandates this and mandates that. We're like, it doesn't make sense. It's crazy. It's this, well, we'll just follow it. It doesn't make, and we look at it, it gets scary. And we start living by sight. And then when fear happens, does anybody remember what Mike said a few weeks ago? I hope you remember what he said about fear. What happens when we fear? We compromise. What happens when we fear? We lie. What happens when we fear? We scheme. What happens when we fear? We don't honor God. Do not fear. God is with you. He will not forsake you. He will never leave you if you are His own. The marvelous truth of those who have put their faith in Jesus Christ is that when we act faithlessly, God remains faithful. He cannot deny Himself. That means God has promised to remain faithful to His children, those who have been saved by His grace through Jesus, and that faithfulness will never end. I was talking with a brother this morning. He says, I feel a little strange. I have peace. I have peace. I have a sureness of my life. Where does that peace and sureness come from? It comes from God. It comes from trusting in the one who is able. Not trusting in me. Trusting in Him who is able to accomplish all that He sets His mind to. Why did we read Isaiah 46 2 times? I was going to have him read it again. Why? Because God accomplishes all that He sets His mind to. He is a faithful God. The Apostle Paul proclaims a great truth in 2 Timothy 2:11 through 13. Don't turn there, but listen carefully. 2 Timothy 2:11 through 13, which says this, the saying is trustworthy, for if we have died with Him, we will also live with Him if we endure. We will also reign with Him. If we deny Him, He will also deny us. If we are faithless, He remains faithful, for He cannot deny Himself. Don't miss that. He further makes a point in Romans 8:38 and 39. Again, please listen carefully. Romans 8:38 and 39. For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. He cannot deny Himself. He cannot deny the ones He has chosen. He is not denying Israel. He is not denying the covenant to Abraham. He will not deny this covenant with Isaac. Does Abraham mess up? Does Isaac mess up? How about Jacob? He had everything together, didn't he? He learned from his mistakes of his fathers. I'll get to that in a minute. Christians should be people of faith. That seems like a given. That seems like a no-brainer that Christians should be people of great faith. It seems that would be obvious. But there are many of us who live without much faith, in a way that we could often be described as faithless Christians because there's not much need for faith in the way that we live. Faith isn't always easy. It usually is not. And God's provision isn't always comfortable. Get that? God's provision isn't always comfortable. It rarely is. Will we shrink away from faith when it becomes difficult and uncomfortable, or will we lean into God because we trust Him to provide? We raise our hands to Him and we sing. We say He is the provider. We love Him. We trust Him. Trust and obey. Father, we believe, we trust You. And then we walk out of this place and immediately fall into fear. We immediately fall into compromise. We immediately do the same things that Abraham and Isaac have done. Don't miss that. Remember, the Bible defines faith this way. What is faith? Hebrews 11:1. What is faith? Now, faith is being sure. Don't miss that word. Being sure. What is it to be sure? You're 100% positive. You're sure. Faith is being sure of what you hope, for certain of what you do not see. That means faith points at something that you don't currently have, something that is beyond you. We are, yes, living in the kingdom, and yet there is a kingdom to come. That is true. We are sojourners, just like Abraham was a sojourner, a traveler in the land, an alien, a resident alien, already receiving the promise, but yet he had not received it. Do we see that? It was already promised, but he was yet on his faith journey. We have Isaac, who again is on a faith journey, has promises and a covenant of what is to come, what will come, because God makes it come, but yet he has not received it yet. Does that make sense? So what does that show us here today? What are we? Sojourners. What are we? Resident aliens. We possess the land, yet we don't possess the land. Do you get that? We are the kingdom, yet the kingdom is to come. It sounds like a great paradigm or a mystery or some weird, strange paradox is what I meant. It sounds strange, does it not? But it's true. You can live a sold-out life because Jesus said, I have you in the palm of my hand and I will never let you go. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about the clothes you wear. Don't worry about the money in your bank account. Trust me in this. Obey me, and I will take care of you. Doesn't mean we don't work hard. Doesn't mean we don't plan. It just means we trust God with everything. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, the reason Christians can live courageously is because we walk by faith, not by sight. Well, let's turn to our text today, Genesis 26, 1 through 11. You say, wow, we covered a lot before we got here. We need to. We need to realize that this is not a history lesson for something in the past. This is a present lesson for something that's being worked out right now in us who are sitting here, in us who are going, in us who are living. This is all active. Faith is to be active. Why did I have Mike read that? Faith is to be active. Faith is to be going. Faith is to be doing. Faith is to be obeying. Faith is to be living. We're not called unto death except to our old self. We're called unto life, unto newness of life, unto the transformation of life, unto the transformation of God Almighty in us, working this out. And it started right here. This is the beginning, the genesis of who we are today. The genesis of who we are today. 26, 1 through 11. Listen. A quick summary of this before I read. When you act faithlessly, God remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. Sounds like Brian's repeating himself. Yes, I am. So we are going to look at these two paths of faithlessness that we could be led down. Two paths of faithlessness that we could be led down. Let's look at verses 1 through 5, and we will see the foundation for trusting God, God's faithfulness to his word. Genesis 26, verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. So Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall, future, tell you. Live for a time in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands. I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and will give your descendants all these lands. And by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. because Abraham obeyed me and fulfilled his duty to me and kept my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Wow. I thought Abraham was unworthy. He is. But who was he following? The one who is worthy. Do you remember the song we sang last week? He is. Is he worthy? He is. Is he worthy of all these things? He is. Is he worthy of our devotion? He is. Is he worthy of our worship? He is. Is he worthy of everything that we have and are? He is. Because we have nothing without him. We can do nothing without him. We can do nothing without him. We can't blink an eye. We don't have a heartbeat. We don't have one more day on this planet without him. Let us look how quickly the child of promise, the man of a covenant, stumbles in fear. Remember what fear brings? Compromise. Remember what fear brings? Scheming. In verses 6 through 11, we will see that there are again two paths that faithlessness leads us down. Verse 6, so Isaac lived in Gerar. When the man of the place asked about his wife, Abimelech asked, he said, she is my sister. For he was afraid to say, my wife, thinking, and not trusting, thinking, the men of the place might kill me on account of Rebekah, since she is beautiful. Now it came about, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked down through a window and saw them, and behold, Isaac was caressing his wife Rebekah. Then Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, she certainly is your wife. So how is it that you said, she is my sister? As I ruminated on this, as I deeply thought about this, I was convicted about something. We see a repetition here. It almost sounds like a parallel to exactly what we saw Abraham do. He went down into Egypt and he did the same scheming, the same fearfulness to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh ends up so upset, he rebukes Abraham and sends him out under armed guard. Get out of my country. And then a while later, he's in the same area under probably a different king, Abimelech. It's more like a title, like a Pharaoh or a Caesar, because many years have now passed. This is more than 60 years later. We can't miss that. It seems like, wow, all this is happening so quickly. No, this is almost decades later. Over 60 years later, he's meeting with this Abimelech, which is probably a title of a king handed down. And he does the same thing as his father. As I was again ruminating on that, thinking about that, I grew ashamed. I grew very convicted of my life. Our children will follow our faults many times more than they follow our faith. I see seasoned saints are agreeing. Many times our children will follow our faults more than our faith. But what are we to do then with our faults? What are we to do then with our children as I stand before my children? Confess to them, I am a man. That's not an excuse. I am a man. I am a man who makes mistakes. I am a man who sometimes walks in fear, not wanting to. I am sometimes a man who compromises, but shouldn't. A man who needs other men to stand up and remind me, trust in God. Somebody with a strong spirit, somebody with a strong heart, somebody with a strong prayer life comes alongside you as you're stumbling, and they say, keep on going, brother or sister, keep on going. Trust the Lord, trust the Lord, trust the Lord. And we go through those times with that hope, with that encouragement, with that faith. And then when they're falling and they're stumbling and they're admitting and repenting of their sin, that's what our children need to see. Our repentance before them and the world. That I'm not a perfect man, but I love my God. I am not close to a perfect man, But I love Jesus, and I know what he did on the cross. And I know the dirty, rotten scoundrel that he saved. And I know he has set me free from those chains, and I no longer have to live in those chains. Praise God? Praise God. So here we have a unholy, uncircumcised Philistine rebuking Isaac. Interesting. God can take the heart of a king. God can take the heart of any king and use it like water. Steer it where he wants it to go. He can use any king. Circumcised, uncircumcised. Believing, unbelieving. Heathen, totally sold out against him. God can steer his heart to accomplish his works. Isaiah 46, right? I can bring the bird of prey from the other side of the earth and accomplish what I want to accomplish. And I will accomplish my promises, he says. Oh, I don't know about you, but that jazzes me up. That gives me fire in my wood. That gives me just, I want to go and tell the nations. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to go and tell the nations. Continuing in verse 9, and Isaac said to him, because I thought otherwise, I might be killed on account of her. And Abimelech said, what is this that you have done to us? One of the people might easily have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So Abimelech commanded all the people, saying, he who touches this man or his wife will certainly be put to death. What is the one thing that Isaac was trusting in this moment? He was trusting that his wife was beautiful. Who else did that? Abraham. But Isaac was not trusting the God that just gave him the first 5 verses of this covenant promise. I will be with you. This is what's going to happen. I will establish you. I will, I am, I will, I am. And immediately, in fear, he compromises. In fear, he schemes and lies. This isn't his half-sister. This isn't his sister. This is his wife. He was trusting more in her beauty than he was trusting in his God. And before we lay too much blame and too much judgment upon Isaac, I had to point all 10 fingers back at the person who was reading it. How often do I set aside the trust that I should have in God, the faith that I have in God, the hope that I do have in God, and I set it aside for the fear of man? Worried about what they might think. Worried about what man might do to me. He says, what can he do to me in Christ Jesus? Nothing. Even if he takes my life, what is that to me? Talking with a brother this morning. Jealous that somebody went on to be with the Lord first. Why? Because this is not my home. This is not my home. This is not your home if you are in Christ Jesus. In verse 6 through 7, we see path 1. Faithlessness will lead you to fear man rather than trust God. Faithlessness will lead you to fear man rather than trust God. Do we fear man in our culture? What do we strive for in this social media? What are we striving for? Oh, if I don't get a lot of likes on that comment, boy, I'm not loved. Boy, if I don't get a lot of hearts and thumbs up, nobody loves me. Boy, if somebody they greeted that person and they didn't have time for me, therefore I'm not worthy. That's the lies of the flesh. That's the lies of the enemy. I don't need man's approval. He said, don't seek man's approval. If you do the things of God, if you preach truth to somebody, do you think that they're going to love you? If they understand, if their eyes are open, their ears are open, they will love you very much. But those that don't love the Lord, those that are enemies of God, will hate you. Because they first hated him. He said, don't be surprised. Don't say, oh me, oh my. As soon as I went out on the street and started preaching the gospel, I got an egg thrown in my face. As soon as I went out and preached the gospel, somebody slashed my tires. As soon as I went out and preached the gospel, somebody tore my flag down. Oh my, I didn't see that coming. Yeah, we should see it coming. It's okay. Did Paul say, oh me, oh my, as soon as I started living for Jesus, they beat me? That's unfair. As soon as I started living for Jesus, they threw me in prison. That's unfair. Is that what Paul said? No. He said, praise be, he turned to worship. Praise be to God that I'm found worthy to even do the great sufferings along with the Lord. He saw it as a mark of God's love and approval and His pleasure in his life. He wasn't surprised. Why? Because he believed the words of Jesus. He believed the promise of God. So should we. In everything you do, believe God. In everything you do, trust God. He is the God of all. Path 2, faithlessness will lead you to scheme rather than trust God. Then in verses 8 through 11 we read, God's gracious faithfulness. God's gracious faithfulness. When you act faithlessly, God remains faithful, for He cannot deny Himself. We sometimes say, I know what I have read, I know what God has told me, but... and it doesn't fit our narrative. It doesn't fit our plan. It says a man plans out his steps, but God establishes the man's steps. You may say, I'm going this direction. God says, no, not today. Oh, I'm going for this job. No, that's not where I want you. Oh, this is the person for me. No, it's not the one I want for you. Where's the land you're sending me to? Patience, son, patience. I'll get you there. But I'm digging wells and they're stopping them up, and I'm digging another well and they're hating me and they're pushing me out of the country, and I'm trying to do the things you've told me to, and they just keep pushing me, and pretty soon he's in Beersheba. He's in God's promise in verse 23. Wow. This Isaac was being pushed along by good things and bad things. What do you think God uses to push us along to where He wants us to be? Good things and bad things. Sometimes He slams doors shut so that we'll go through the door that He wants us to go through. We need to learn to trust Him. Sometimes we trust in our money. God has told us to be faithful and to be a conduit, a constant conduit with everything that we have. It's not ours anyways. Say, oh, I'm just going to hang on to it a little tighter. It ain't mine. And if I let it go too early, is God going to rebuke me for loving too much? I can tell you one thing, people. Please look here. I can tell you one thing. God will never rebuke you for loving too much. Never. But don't love as the world loves. Love as Christ loved. Sacrificial love. True love. Telling people the truth. Does truth sometimes hurt? It doesn't even feel good sometimes, does it? Even when it's delivered with softness and meekness and love, sometimes truth really hurts. Do you think the truth hurt Isaac? Can you imagine this man's living there for a long time, probably developed a relationship with the men of Philistia, probably developed a relationship with Abimelech himself? Must be, because he lived nearby, because Abimelech's looking out the window and going, what is going on with that? That's something that's reserved for husband and wife. That ain't what sister and brother do. And he comes in and immediately rebukes him. He tells him the truth. What have you done? It almost sounds like God in the garden. Adam, where are you? See, it's a wake-up call. Abimelech is a wake-up call to Isaac. What have you done? Isaac's on a faith journey, and he's following his father's faults. So immediately God says, don't go to Egypt. Why does He tell him don't go to Egypt? Because he would have followed his father's footsteps. His father went down into Egypt. He said, I don't want you to go into Egypt. I don't want you to leave the land. Remember this, that Abraham told his servant to go find a wife for Isaac. Why? Because he didn't want him to marry a Canaanite woman, and why else? I don't want my son ever to leave the land. Interesting. So Abraham must have had a conversation somewheres or an understanding of God's word that Isaac was to stay in the land. Amazing stuff. God uses this heathen king. He steers his heart like the stream in his hands. We may ask ourselves, why isn't Isaac rebuked here by God? Why isn't Isaac brought low by God? He's sinning. Why isn't he immediately brought into judgment? Why? Why aren't we? What's the word? We sang about it today. Grace. God in His grace has granted him another day. God in His covenant, see, the covenant had to continue. He had to live. We have a covenant with us that Jesus says, I have bought you with such a precious price. Go therefore to all the nations, go tell them, go live, go in faith, go in hope, go in trust. And what do? We get our little fiefdoms. We have our little safety nets. We have our little communities. And we don't even have enough guts to go across the street and tell our neighbors continually about the Lord. Truth? Why? We're afraid of man. We're afraid of what they might think. We're afraid of what they might say. We're afraid that they might hold us to a standard. They're afraid that they might become Abimelech and say, what are you doing? You said you live for the Lord, but I see you here lying and stealing. You say you live for the Lord, but I heard you swearing and cussing up a storm. I thought that you were one of those chosen Jesus followers. That's what you mentioned to me at the mailbox. Oh man, I'll never mention that to anybody at a mailbox ever again. See, that's what we're so worried about man, we don't care that we're offending God. We're offending a holy and just and merciful and full of grace God. That should bother us. That should bring us to our knees in repentance. That should bring us to a hope in Him, not in us. He says, trust in me. He tells Isaac, trust me. He tells Isaac, I have a covenant with you. He tells us the same thing. Do we see how this pattern goes to us today? Please don't miss it. He calls us to trust Him in our lives. He says that your sin is like a bomb going off. Your sin is like a grenade. It's not a sniper. We think, oh, if I sin, it just hurts me. No, our sin affects everybody around us. If I sin against my wife, who else do I hurt? Myself, my children, my church, my neighbors. I destroy her through my sin, and now I've hurt a lot of people. Sin is not compartmentalized. It's a bomb going off. It's something that immediately needs to be repented of, changed, given over to the Lord, prayed about, put under the grace and mercy of God, and moved away from. Putting off the old man, putting on the newness of life. Being transformed by the Word of God, not by the word of man. See, we're so willing to transform ourselves by the Word and the studies and the scientific blah of the world that we aren't willing to change for the willingness of God to pay on the price of the cross, His blood, His Son, His only Son, whom He loved. He put on the cross for me and you for all eternity. Please don't miss that. Please don't miss that. That's all in Isaac in this promise. Don't miss this promise. God doesn't change. He continues on as He always has. He's always had a plan for all of mankind. From Genesis 3:15 on, He's always had a promise for all of mankind. Through Abraham, He says all the nations will be blessed. Not just Israel, all of the nations. I'll finish with chapter 26, verse 23. Chapter 26, verse 23. And we read, "And he went up from there to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am God, the God of your father Abraham." What's the next line say? Fear not. Why? Why should we not fear? He is with us. Do you trust that? If you don't feel that, go to God. If you don't know that, go to God. He loves you. He sees you. He loves you so dearly. Don't miss that. He has poured out His love for you. He can't love you any more than He did at the cross. He can't love you any more than He did at the cross. Can we please Him? Absolutely. What father in here, when their son or daughter is obedient, is not pleased? Any of you? You're not pleased? Or you are pleased? You are pleased. We are pleased. Raise your hands right now, everybody. We are pleased when we see obedience in our kids. But do you love them anymore? Can you love them any more than when they came out of the womb and you saw that beautiful life, that blessing of life, and you looked into their beautiful face and you said, you are a mystery, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I can't love you any more than I do right now. But then life happens. We don't fall out of love with our children, but we can be pleased with them as they walk in trust and obedience. It's the same thing with the Heavenly Father. He can't love us any more than He did on the cross. He loved us while we were yet His enemies. He died for us. He can't do anything more than that. He's done it all. He is worthy of your life. He is worthy of your life. Let's live it. Let's search the Scriptures together. Let's search the Scriptures on our own. And let's find out what it says. And then as you start getting revelation from God, start living it. Start obeying it. If He says be modest, be modest. If He says put off all filthy talk, put off all filthy talk. If He says a drunkenness is an abomination, drunkenness is an abomination. If He says adultery, looking at others that are not your wife or your husband, is adultery, put some blinders on. Don't run to a computer screen. Don't run to a smut book. Throw those things away. Burn them. Burn them. Throw them away. They're evil. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. He says, seek wisdom, it's more precious than gold. Seek wisdom, it's more precious than rubies. Seek wisdom with all that you are and all that you have. Seek wisdom. It says Jesus was God's wisdom. Jesus is God's wisdom. Seek Him with all that you are. Know that He is true. Know that He is righteous. If you don't know this covenanting God, if you don't know this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, if you don't know Him, if you don't trust Him, come to Him. He says, come unto me, all you who are weary, all you who are heavy laden. He died on a cross, and I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it until the last breath out of my body. He died like this. Why? Because His arms are always wide open. He says, I came into the world not to condemn the world. The world's condemned already. I came into the world to set the world free. He came into the world for your and my salvation. Why aren't we taking that to our neighbors? Do you not care? Why aren't you taking it to strangers? How about your enemies? Are you taking that message to your enemies? You should be. Instead of going home and grumbling and scheming how you can get back at somebody, go home and drop to your face and knees and say, God, how can I bless them? How can I bless my enemy? What is the cup of water I should take? What is the calm word that will quiet much wrath? What is it, Lord? Give me your wisdom. Give me the wisdom you gave to Abraham in his journey of faith. Give to me the wisdom you gave to Isaac in his journey of faith. Give to me the wisdom that you gave to Jacob in his journey of faith. We are on a journey of faith. We have a promised land that's coming. We have a Jesus that's coming. I can tell you it's true. And there's markers that we can't miss. Markers that are all around us. Markers to open our eyes to this time. Israel is in the land. Jerusalem is now the capital of Israel. I don't care what you think. That's true. If that's true, God is still moving. God will accomplish everything He has set His mind to. If you don't know Him, please don't leave this place. I'm not going to beg. I'm just going to make a statement. I'm not going to beg you. I'm going to make a statement. If you don't know the peace of God, if you don't know the joy of His coming, if you don't know the joy of Him paying for your sins, if you're not trusting in Him, feel free to come forward and talk about that. Feel free to run to Jesus. He's got His arms wide open. He's not going to push you away. He says, let the children come unto me. Let the children come unto me. Don't hold them away from me. Come as a child. Come as a child and embrace the kingdom. Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this moment in time that you have reminded us of your covenant with Abraham, that you have reminded us of your covenant with Isaac, that you have reminded us of your covenant with Jacob, Israel, that you have reminded us on the cross that your covenant is with us, the believers to come. And you said, Lord, more blessed are they that believe and do not see me than those that believe and see. Father, I see you in everything. I see you in the stars, in the moon, in the clouds. I hear you in the rolling thunder. Father, I see you in the birds and the bees and all those things that are around us. Your speech goes out continually, Father. Your speech goes out continually to all men on this planet. Lord, if there's one woman, child, or man that's here today that has heard your truth, that wants to come to know you as Lord and Savior, Father, I pray that you would draw them to yourself, that you would draw them unto truth, that you would draw them unto life, and this would be their day of salvation. Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this life. We thank you for what you've done on the cross. We thank you for the joy of coming today, for in the morning comes great joy. The rejoicing comes in the morning. In Jesus' precious name, amen. Thank you. You are dismissed.